Get Brocked here. Today, a Memoriam of the Midnight Oil. The Midnight Oil is a prominent ship in the Get Brocked Space Engineers Outlands series. If you don't know what that is, and if you're interested after watching this, perhaps go watch an episode. Playlist is linked down in the description. And if you're kind of confused on what exactly it is, perhaps go watch a separate video I have explaining the series. It's not too complicated, but it does need a primer. It's a D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, turn-based RP thing, combining Let's Play elements, active PvP matches, and 30-plus players, all that can influence the story. So, want to know more? Video link down below. Let's get started. The Riders Midnight Oil is a heavy, armor-cored, doubly reinforced ship with a single large citadel housing all vitals, including crew accommodations, which is also triple reinforced. She spouts triple complements of 2-barrel 400mm guns, putting her total broadside at 6 guns, which is quite impressive considering her size. Due to her heavy, overbuilt design, she is classed as a armored cruiser, one of the last before the pre-split when the system got cut off. As no shipyards in the First Fleet system can effectively forge the plating of the size and magnitude required for ships of this classification. All the cruisers from this point on are light cruisers. So if you see a heavy armor cruiser, it means it existed before the split. So the Oil is quite an old girl. The Midnight Oil is the first and last of the Queen Providence class. While no future ships of her design have been built due to budgetary issues, much of the tooling, parts, and equipment meant for future ships have been used to keep her somewhat active through her long lifespan. She's been used in one form or another ever since the First Fleet system split nearly a century ago. Since then, she's been used by mercenaries, the First Fleet, and then later on a hodgepodge crew, which would make her final crew. Like most ships in the Rider fleet, she would eventually, due to circumstance, end up serving with the Riders because the crew believed in their vision. She would receive some dedicated Rider personnel, but her core crew of over almost 30 years was kept intact. This decision would make her one of the most potent assets in the system. Most crews were not particularly well trained relative to previous series standards, and a lot of them were frankly winging it. A lot of them had experience, but very few had a long-standing crew like the Oil did. Jumping forward to when the Eternity arrived, Episode 1, the Midnight Oil had been a core ship of the Riders for some time, though at this point, she and other ships in the formations were mostly low-key, aside from several incursions into the asteroid region to subdue basically overzealous miner-turned-pirates kind of thing. After the Eternity's arrival, she would go on to engage her once, being the sole survivor of said squadron, being the only ship up to this point to successfully engage and then disengage the Eternity. Later on, after jumping on a CDF task force along with Zephyr Squadron, whom were sieging the Cantina, the Rider HQ, she would proceed to get separated from the Rider formation in this battle, which would become a reoccurring theme. However, she would then also, in a also reoccurring theme, would tank the entire enemy formation for upwards of 45 seconds. After being rescued and repulsing the CDF assault, the ship would be found with all surface structures heavily damaged. However, the actual superstructure, the core, was relatively undamaged, so repairs were able to be enacted quick. In Episode 6, she would be repaired and then redeployed with Zephyr Squadron to go on the offensive, and finally aid in the Rider breakout. This formation would first repulse and then take control of the CDF-controlled Winchester shipyard, which would remain in Rider hands for quite some time to come. From here, she would sit idly and enact some repairs and modifications as she sat in defense of this area being built up. A short assault in Tile 1A would take place where the gunnery skills of the Midnight Oil crew was a shining light in an otherwise utterly botched operation where the Oil herself had to eventually tow home the battleship, remember she's a cruiser, tow home the battleship Ravager after said ship sustained massive damage to her drive systems. In the confusion, the Oil accidentally rammed the Ravager. Surprisingly, neither ship honestly received meaningful damage, and in the future, both ship crews seemed less interested in who actually caused the ramming or incident, and more concerned which ship did more damage to the other ship, or which ship sustained less damage, with the halls of the Cantina and similar bars being lit with debates on who did more damage to who. After a short hiatus, the Midnight Oil, often just referred to as Oil, had gained quite the reputation, and honestly competed with the battleship Ravager for the position of the actual fleet of the Rider formations, having amassed a similar kill count and honestly performed better in a lot of regards to said battleship. A 9.5 oil would once again go on to the offensive, along with Zephyr assaulting a CDF strongpoint, one of the strongest in the sectors. The formation would go on to spectacularly destroy the local shipyard, FOB, with near zero damage taken in return, with the CDF formation scrambling to react. However, in a very Rider fashion, the assault was once again blunted when the Rider capital ship, Ravager, was caught out of formation, swarmed, and forced the retreat. Regardless of this debate, the oil once again had to tow the Ravager home in a sight that was becoming very repetitive to Zephyr Squadron. From here, things would be quiet for a week or two. However, out of nowhere, a series of events set the oil on a fateful mission. The FN Eternity would intercept and then work with a previously thought dead group of riders who were deep behind enemy lines on the moon. After battling with the CDF, this crew was sent back to the Cantina as their ship was mostly destroyed. However, due to CDF's wide-reaching intel networks, this group was intercepted. The Riders, not being one to leave crew behind, sent the Midnight Oil and a task force of light destroyers to beat the CDF to the punch and bring their boys home. However, while they did manage to retrieve the crew, they were quickly intercepted by a veteran CDF task force, comprised of CDF captains well adept at fighting capital ships. The destroyer escort was quickly dispatched. However, the oil proved much harder to deal with. It actually fought so hard that the CDF task force had to actually temporarily retreat and reassess the situation, wondering if they were not fighting more ships. However, in this quick hiatus, the oil was actually able to raise up the EFN Eternity, which was in the area, and she came to the oil's aid. In the perhaps most one-sided battle of the war. I wrote the script. I think it's the one. Okay. I'm being told this statement is in hot contention. So, in perhaps allegedly, but not really, but totally, in the most one-sided battle of the war, the armored cruiser Oil and the 6th generational battleship Eternity tore through a CDF heavy squadron, nearly destroying a CDF armored cruiser, destroying utterly 2 destroyers in record time, forcing a retreat in under 15 minutes from first contact with less than 2 minutes of actual guns-on battling. However, when all was thought was won, a lone unmarked stealth cruiser appeared from nowhere, flying unknown flags and having an IFF marking it as civilian. However, the vessel engaged upon the vessels. So after this unmarked vessel clearly showed hostile intentions, the EFN Rider Joint Formation engaged the vessel, promptly giving it a lesson on what heavy weapons can actually do to a non-reinforced ship. The ship literally was split in half. However, the CDF, ever so adept, used this moment to board the now severely crippled oil, which had begun to amass a lot of damage. The ground team, veterans at ground combat, quickly overwhelmed the longtime oil crew. In spectacular fashion, rather than let their ship, their home, or really their pride, be wounded, the oil's crew detonated the ship's core to prevent capture. In a manner only fit for the oil, the core's detonation was actually mostly contained within the armored core, protecting the rest of the ship, meaning the ship was actually still somewhat operational after a core detonation. It took another 3 1,500 axial lance shots by the Eternity, a weapon that would usually completely, utterly destroy other ships, including the CDF cruiser that was present. It took these 3 shots to somewhat scuttle the oil. Alright, hey, thanks for watching. This was a cool little aside, showing some history and lore behind the ships in the universe, kind of tying it all together when they go out. Thanks for watching. It's worth noting, this ship is a kinship within the Outlands series. While the oil might be one of the more notable ships, there are many other viewer ships that are forging their own stories as time is going on right now in this emergent gameplay series. If you're interested in joining, hop on to my Discord and perhaps join the Unaligned, the Riders, CDF, or perhaps we might be working on a new faction. Slight spoiler. Before I send you off, I'd like to spend a second thanking my Patreons. These guys help pay the channel bills, and frankly give me a lot of motivation to make these non-mainline contents, like this oil video, for example. If you're interested in dropping a tip, and perhaps making my dream of being a part-time YouTuber, or even a full-time YouTuber, perhaps head over, drop a tip. If not, no worries. Commenting, liking, all that stuff, more than enough. Anyways, hey, we'll see you guys around. Thanks for watching.